Yeah.
Just speak into it. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Thanks. Well, good morning, y'all. How's everybody doing? Awesome. Let's start with a word of prayer. The Lord be with you. God, we live in this county of Cabarrus. We have neighbors that are like us and different from us, and we pray that we would see them all as created in your image. Be with us in our conversation this morning and lead us where we need to be. In your name, amen. So thanks for being here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Gary Kovar. I play guitar at the 9 o'clock service, and I'm hoping that this can be a conversation about how we at All Saints feed our neighbors, so simply put. So to that end, it's not a formal thing, so if you have questions or comments, please interrupt. But I will say, if you're interrupting, you have to do it with the microphone. Otherwise, the people that are online can't hear. They also can't interrupt. So that's their loss, I guess, unless they send me a text message or something. Wouldn't that be neat? So if you do those, seriously, just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you, or shout out your question, and I'll repeat your question so that they can be involved as well. And that's it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and then we're going to go into some slides and talk about what our agenda is this morning, etc. So in 2022 and 23, I volunteered at the night shelter with the EYC and men's group. Jim Williams was coordinating that at the time. And so when I heard he was moving, I asked him who was going to lead that ministry, and at the time he didn't have an answer. So a few weeks later, after men's group, he said, "Hey, can we go out for coffee sometime and chat about night shelter?" And I went, yeah. I'm not really like an organized person, and I definitely don't know how to cook for a lot of people. But yeah, let's talk. And so anyway, now I'm standing here, and I want to tell you that after we serve in July and November. All Saints does at the night shelter, 2 weeks. In July, after we served, I was amazed not at the food, although there was some amazing food, but really how we at All Saints do it. It's very much a relational ministry, and people have that in their bones. They bring food, and then they sit down and dine with the guests. And it's a recognition of who our neighbors are, which led me to think, we do night shelter 14 days of the year. What the heck do we do the other 351? And so I started asking people that, and it turns out that was kind of a dumb question, because everybody answered, well, what about this, and what about this? And so what I realized is that for 351 days of the year that we're not at the night shelter, we are feeding our neighbors in many different ways. And so I didn't see that. I needed to ask the question. And so that's sort of why we're here. So I want to say that this is not a meeting about a new ministry. This is highlighting what we do, inviting you to be involved in new and interesting ways, or even just to think in ways you haven't thought about ministry, this feeding our neighbors before. And there's probably a lot more than what are in the slides and in our conversation today. So this is just the space we have and the time we have, and that's what we're going to do. The important part is having those of you that are interested in the room and talking about and thinking about, praying about our neighbors. Okay. Did it work? Yeah, all right. So we have an agenda. We're going to look at numbers. That's small text up there, isn't it? Can you read it okay? Okay. It was much bigger on my laptop, or I thought so anyway. We're going to look at numbers. We're going to read some scripture. So if you're sitting on this side, you're going to get called on to grab a Bible. Sorry you picked that seat, or not. A quick high-level overview of these ministries, some that we're already involved in. This is not an exhaustive list of ministries, so if you're familiar with one that's not up there, it was totally omission on my part, and I sincerely apologize. There's a helpful chart at the end that I think is helpful, and then a calendar. So I want to start with numbers. The first three bullets up here kind of break down about 12% of Cabarrus County is food insecure. That number comes to us from feedingamerica.org. They do a huge annualized survey, and if you are looking for a rabbit hole on the internet, that's a great one to get into. The most recent numbers we have are from 2022. 2023 should be available in the next few weeks, and I'll be curious to see what's changed. One of the things I want to call out is, by their definition, someone that is food insecure is someone that experiences food insecurity for 7 out of 12 months of the year. Well, what's food insecurity? So defined by the USDA, lack of access at times to enough food for an active, healthy life. It's associated with numerous adverse social and health outcomes and is increasingly considered a critical public health issue. The way I think about this is if I'm eating lunch and I say I don't have money for dinner, so I'm eating half my lunch so I have something to eat later on. That's a good way to think about it. Or I'm deciding between dinner and the electric bill. Those are the kinds of things that would fall under food insecurity. So what else did I skip up there? There's some numbers up there that you can read. I'm not repeating them here. Here's an interesting one that I like, though. The budget shortfall in this county for food insecurity is $20 million. So $20 million is a big number, but it's a number that I can sort of wrap my head around. If we could come up with $20 million magically, we could solve food insecurity in the county. Of course, it's not that simple, but that's $95 per non-food insecure person a year in this county, which is a really simple number, under $100 per non-food insecure person, and we wouldn't have food insecurity in the county. So the next two bullets, so 4 and 5, come from Data USA, which compiles data from data.gov and the census. These numbers up here shouldn't scare us or depress us about our county. We're better than average in some ways. We're below average in other ways. Not alarmingly so in either way. And this isn't about a guilt thing. This is just knowing where we are, knowing where our neighbors are, and knowing the arena that we practice our Christianity in. The last point, I think, before moving on is I think this last number is interesting, that we have somewhere around 10% of the emergency beds. Obviously, homelessness and food insecurity, there's a really tight coupling, as you can imagine, right? If you can't afford housing, affording meals is also something that becomes problematic. I guess I want to highlight, too, just as we think about food insecurity, feeding our neighbors means they don't have to decide between paying a power bill and eating, or in some cases it means that they can save money for a down payment on their own place. So it's significant. We're not in a county where we're fighting starvation, but there are people that are struggling, and that love can be a big deal. So we're not going to read all this scripture. I see there's, a bunch up there, but I want to cover a few pieces. And if you want to take a photo, the last ones are entire chapters that are kind of wrapping an area. So they're great to bookmark and spend a few minutes. Would somebody be willing to read Luke 3, 7 to 11? And it doesn't have to be just this side of the room. If you're really motivated, I'll bring you a Bible. Sure. Yeah. Do I have a volunteer? Luke? Go for it. Luke? Oh, thank you. I already forgot that. I'm unscrewing it. There we go.
Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, verses 7 through 11. John said to the crowds that came out to be baptized by him, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Bear fruits worthy of repentance. Do not begin to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our ancestor.' For I tell you, God is able from these stones to raise up children to Abraham. Even now the axe is lying at the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire." And the crowds asked him, "What then should we do?" In reply, he said to them, "Whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none, and whoever has food must do likewise."
So I don't want to focus on the first part of that, like the being thrown into the fire and all that, but that last part, John's pretty clear. If you've got 2 coats or if you've got food and someone's hungry, of course, this is John the Baptist, right, talking in early, where are we, Luke? Would someone like to read the Matthew text?
Feeding the 5,000. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. Jesus said to them, They need not go away. You give them something to eat. They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to the heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
And of course, in that, we think about abundance. One of the things that jumped out to me while I was reading that in prep for this was Jesus sets an example, right? He takes the food and he gives thanks and then shares it. In this case, that fed 5,000 people with 12 baskets. It very much is a story of abundance, and I don't know. Thinking about it, I get chills again. It's pretty amazing. Would someone like to read James? Thanks, Al.
This is the New King James Version, same stuff. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or a sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, "Depart in peace, be warmed and filled," but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus, also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead.
And I think some of us are aware that that's scripture that can be used as like a works righteousness type conversation. And that's definitely not where I'm taking this. I want to pull out one verse. The translation I have, I think, is NIV, 2 verses, 15 and 16. I'll make sure I included those. Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm and well fed," but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? I find this personally to be like a convicting verse because I've done this. I've had this conversation with someone at Walmart, right? I talked to this guy at Walmart, and he was waiting for, I don't know what he was waiting for, but he's hanging out there. I was chatting with him. "Are you okay?" And blah, blah, blah. And, talking about how he's down on his luck, and I finished, I said, "Well, good luck and God bless," and I walked away. What in the world? And echoing in my head is that number of that average cost of $4.25 in this county for a meal. It's not a big amount, So there's that piece that we have these opportunities constantly. And if we're paying attention, it's amazing how often it happens. So that's why I pull that verse out. So I encourage you to read the other chapters when you have time. I'm going to hop into ministries now. Before I do that, I expected more interruption at this point, especially from this row. But you have an interruption? Sure.
I'd like to interrupt. Yeah. So we've all been in that situation where we see someone or they come up and they ask us to give them money, generally money, right? And so Mark Robinson has a good tactic to take care of that. So I'd invite Mark to tell us about that.
Thanks, Chuck. We started doing blessing bags, and then we realized that that's really not that helpful. You see they hang around in your car forever and ever and ever. But what I finally landed on was a McDonald's $10 gift card. And I go through and I get like 4 or 5 of them, and we put some in Karen's car, we put some in my car. And when I see someone, rather than giving them money, I said, "Here, have lunch on me." And it blesses me and them.
So a $10 gift card. Does it have to be from McDonald's? No. So the thing about McDonald's, I don't know if you know where the camps are, but they're really around that interchange, 85 and whatever, our big interchange, right over there. And behind that, there are a lot of homeless people. So McDonald's is kind of a central point. And you'll often see people, I go that way frequently, and you'll often see people crossing the street, a lot of people walking. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
When you say $100 per year for those who are not at risk, that just amazes me. That we need somehow to get that word out, because I think many people just write a check and where could it go?
Well, and I think that's a good question. So that number comes from very literally that 20 million, if we had that number available, and looking at the percentage of the population that's not food insecure. So how that would magically turn into it, I don't think there's an easy way. But if we conceptualize that's the effort that it would take over the course of an entire year, it's not a huge amount. It's certainly not insurmountable. So yeah, it is a stunning number. All right, so the first ministry I want to talk about is the weekly food collection. Every week we collect food. And when these containers get full, actually, I'm going to grab the container. So when it gets full, or every 2 to 3 weeks, Don Foskey takes it down to the CCM food pantry right over. Oh, you take it to the big one. Okay. Take that weekly to there, and 2 to 3 weeks from there to. It's like a distribution model. I got it. Yeah. Sorry, Don was saying, I forgot. You just keep waving at me. I'll remember by the end. Don was saying that food from this basket, and there's also, in the 1110 service, there's a basket behind the last pew on the left-hand side. Often at the end of the service, it collects bulletins. But I think if we put food in there, that won't be the case. People will get the idea. Don was saying that what he does is he moves it from here to the big box out in the Welcome Center, and then every couple weeks takes that to CCM. If you're heading to head out here and make a left past coffee, past the men's room, on your right-hand side is where that box is. Or, yes?
If you have a lot of those plastic food line or tier bags you want to get rid of, bring them and leave them in there, because CCM needs the bags to give out the food. It's a good way to recycle those bags.
So plastic grocery bags are also used by CCM when folks come to the food pantry to take their food home. Yeah, we also add those to that large box. So at the 9 o'clock service, Nancy invites people to bring food up when offering is collected. Well, anybody, not just Nancy, whoever's presiding. And at 11:10 behind the left-hand side. And I had the note here about the bin in the Welcome Center. You thought I was going to forget that, didn't you, Don? No. Oh, man. So I want to say that my personal experience with this ministry is rocky. Some weeks I make it a point when I go to the grocery store, I purchase a couple extra cans and I stick them in an annoying spot on the counter so that I can't leave on Sunday without them. And inevitably I leave without them and text Ron and say, hey, can you bring those cans? I forgot them. A lot of weeks, or years if I'm honest, I watch Nancy invite people forward. And some weeks someone goes forward and I go, gosh, maybe I should get some cans. At some point last year, Charlotte was in kindergarten. They did this food drive, and the class that won got an ice cream party, right? That was what got me, really clicked it in for me, was Charlotte was like, we got to go get canned food, Dad. And so I said to her, well, you got to remind me to do this every week. So I'm not putting the responsibility on her, but it's helpful to have that excitement in the house. If you have that, someone can, yeah. And that was my other note. We don't win an ice cream party. What we win is our neighbors not being hungry, which I think is actually probably healthier for us and still really cool. And I want to tell you 2 more things about this ministry. First, the food pantry is never not looking for food. Is that true? Always looking for food. And I'll add, we say this all the time. We need, if you don't know what to bring, they have a page on their website. We just need a link from our website to that page so people don't have to look for it. I'll make sure that happens. The second thing, and this is a little sillier, when the offering's collected, whoever's presiding says, all things come of thee, O Lord, and we reply with? One of the first times we brought in food, Ty, who's a teenager, said, and of thine own have we given beans. And And I like that. If we replace that last word with whatever we brought in, and of thine own have we given beans or corn or lasagna or whatever it is we're feeding our neighbors, like, it's a cool reminder. I was annoyed at first, obviously, but now it kind of makes me laugh. In all these ministries, I have like a last sentence on what is required. So in this ministry, what's required? A little bit of money to purchase non-perishable food. You don't even have to mark your calendar. Like literally every Sunday you can do it. So if you forget on a Sunday or you leave it on your counter, like it's cool. Next Sunday, it's still welcome, which is good if you're unorganized. Okay. In addition to weekly food collection, we have 2 focused non-perishable food drives each year. And the first one is coming up in Lent. EYC is helping promote this one, which I'm pretty excited about. They're making signs and commercials, so check out the Weekly Word when that's available. And then there's also a Thanksgiving food drive. One of the things All Saints has helped coordinate is turkeys. I know some people like, Thanksgiving, well, I do something different, but, culturally, like, if you grew up eating turkey and that's a Thanksgiving thing, imagine that year you can't have turkey, and imagine what it feels like to go to CCM and leave with a turkey. That's a super cool thing. Don, yes? You have to wait for the mic.
2 suggestions. A lot of people don't know how to cook a turkey. And I remember the first time I went to cook a turkey, I was going to feed fellow shipmates from the Navy, and I thought I was going to get a fresh turkey, and they only had frozen turkeys the night before Thanksgiving. And I remember taking a hot shower with the turkey to try to thaw it out before everybody came. And so I would encourage you to think about maybe giving some instructions of how easy it is and maybe giving them thawed turkeys on Wednesday.
First, Al, thank you for that story. And that's a good call out, too. I mean, there is the reality that, if you're going expecting non-perishable and getting a turkey, I think we have to trust the Holy Spirit there a little bit and that the water heater's working, I guess. If you have Thanksgiving recipe questions, see Al. I think is where we're. This is just like bringing non-perishable food on Sunday. The only difference, it costs a little bit. The only difference is you actually have to mark your calendar. So that's the increase in complexity for this ministry. I encourage you, if you bring it on Sundays, consider food drives. Okay. Don expects more. We expect more. Oh, did I have that on the slide, right? Yeah. Okay. So Realm as well. That's where the money from the turkey comes. So turkey money comes from what's donated on Realm, and then any excess also goes to CCM, correct? We give them the money, they buy the turkeys. Okay, got it. We give them the money, they buy the turkeys. We're not carrying 283 turkeys in. Although in previous years that has happened, not 283, but you have carried frozen turkeys in the past. 1 year. Lesson learned, I guess. This next one was a new one to me, so I don't know. I didn't know this was a thing that was happening. For the last 4 years, Don Foskey and others here, and I'm saying others because I'm sorry, I don't have a list. If you're involved in this, raise your hand. Mark, you are, right? Yeah? John? Awesome. Kathy? Chuck? Well, I'm going to say what I have in notes and then correct me. So go to Barbie Farms. Barbie Farms is over Georgia Isle in, 4 miles from here? Something like that? Poplar Tent. Thank you. So they have food that's not market ready. And so literally, this food would be either composted or left on the vine and plowed over or whatever it grows on. Blemish, too large, too small, what have you, perfectly edible. So in season, which is June to October, this team of, I have 6 people. Is it more than 6? 6 people take tubs from Barbie Farms to CCM, weigh it, take the tubs back. I want to show this part because this is crazy to me. In 4 years, they've taken 30 tons of food, fresh food, 30 tons that would have been compost or plowed down. So that's amazing. This ministry takes muscles and some free time. Doesn't take muscles? Well, you're making my last slide wrong now. All right, well, it doesn't take muscles. It takes time. That's what this ministry takes. So if it's something that you're interested in, see Don or Mark. Great. Okay. I'm trying to go faster because I'm looking at the clock and realizing that my time count with language didn't work with the interruption side, so that's how it goes. I'm including Crop Walk here. This is, and I'm including Crop Walk because it's really an interesting opportunity for us. It's been around for a long time. It's an organization, Church World Services organizes it. And Church World Services is like a national version of CCM, right? So there's 37 denominations involved in it. Like we have our banner out front that we're the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement. There's 36 other branches as well in Church World Services. And so Crop Walk, we don't get a lot of chances to be in community with our brothers and sisters in the Jesus movement here in Cabarrus. Like we do our stuff, and if you're at CCM in person, maybe you're having some overlap, but otherwise we're doing our stuff here, and it's in isolation. So this is a cool opportunity to be in community with other folks. Whether we raise a little or a lot for Crop Walk, that's a valuable part. It's a good place to wear red shirts, and this one we could use a captain for. We're looking for a captain. So this ministry does not require muscle. It does require time and organization. So if that's something that you're about, speak up. We could use that. This last one's a big bucket. And it's actually 3 things in one, and maybe more than 3 because there's just a lot going on. So I started to break this down multiple slides, and I'm like, we're going to be here forever. So I'm going to quickly go through some pieces of this, and then we're going to go to the next slide. So most Sundays EYC meets, and so I'm including them as they're certainly, they're hungry, they're youth. Probably not food insecure, but they're hungry. And so I include this because almost always someone provides a meal for EYC, around 20-ish. It's teenagers who, they're picky, but if they're hungry, they'll eat everything. This is, if you're trying to figure out how I cook for a bunch of people, EYC is a great way to test it out. Not like new recipes, but just can I work in this kitchen, or are my estimates right, or whatever. You can prepare food at home, you can prepare it here. It's like a good toe in the water way to cook for people. That's why I include it. The second one is a newer one for us. So the Mac House. CCM has several houses that are transitional housing. And late last year we got involved with the Mac House, which is mothers and children. That house holds 5 mothers. There's 5 rooms upstairs and their children. So if you have 3 kids, it's 4 of you in a room. If you have 7 kids, there's 8 of you in a room. So it's an opportunity and a place where they can sort of learn life skills, but also have a safe space to get ready to get back out into the real world. And so we started, our goal was to try and provide meals there once a month. On Tuesday nights, they have classes for moms, and so we were trying to provide food, provide dinner there. And it's been a little disruptive. We've had a change in contact, and the schedule's always sort of in flux until the end. But the need, of course, is there. And this is another opportunity where that fellowship comes in. Bring food, sit, and talk. And sometimes it's talking with, elementary school kids or moms or other volunteers, of which there are many. It's a pretty neat ministry. Anything else to add to that, Don, you think?
How many people?
Oh, good question. So 30-ish seems to be the number, but that also fluctuates. Yeah.
Do you cook the food there, or do you bring it there?
It's much easier to take it cooked, although take it cooked, yeah. If they're at the house, which is where we've been traditionally, it's tight in the kitchen. And it's fun. It's like a family, like a big family, holiday meal. Like if you're in there, there's people coming in and out and bumping elbows, and you're squeezing through with your plate because it's a small space for a lot of people to eat. So you're holding your plate. Just off of Spring Street, across from Boys and Girls Club. The back side of the Methodist church there is where the Mac house is. Yes.
Lately, they've been having it in Kannapolis at Memorial Baptist, where they have another house, Our Father's House annex. So they were, because of the space, they moved there, but they may be moving back to Mac. I don't know. It's in flux. So, but it's usually about 20 people though to prepare food for.
And that includes like a youth 20 sometimes. So there's 20, and then there's the kid that eats like 7 tacos, right? Yeah. I grouped these, oh wait, no, I missed the last one. And then finally, night shelter. So for 7 nights in a row, we go to the Center of Hope, night shelter, thank you, which is just off of Cabarrus Avenue, block removed. And we feed 40 guests. And so as important as it is to provide the food, it's sitting down and eating is another part of the ministry and that interaction. And I include this third because there's a stigma around homelessness, right? Like, I'm certain we can all relate to that. And so if you're looking like, I want to cook for people, but I'm just not comfortable going to the night shelter, like, cook for EYC, and then, try the Mac house, and then tag along for a night at the night shelter. You're never alone, right? Yeah, the group. Yes, the smallest group I've seen at night shelter is 4 people, but there have been nights where we've had like 16, which is too many for the kitchen. But it's great. 16 people crammed in there. Yeah. Yeah, 16 all. Yeah. I don't have the numbers, but if you go back to the annual report, like the number of shifts we do in a week is kind of insane. The people that show up. Anyway, so I grouped these 3 because they're similar. Their requirements are the ability to cook for a crowd, which you may or may not know how to do, but a good way to learn is to try it. Ability to chat with anyone, the gift of gab. Love for your neighbors. And then there's a budgetary deal here. If you're used to cooking for your family and suddenly providing, the ingredients for 20 to 30 to 40 people, it's a big step. So this is where these work much better as a team and a shared type thing as opposed to individuals. And just kind of throwing that out there. Okay. Any interruptions? No. All right, so this is the helpful chart at the end. You can remove the muscle column since that's not factually accurate, but sort of working down like, food drives, there's a little cost. Making meals, there's a bigger cost. Being involved with crop walk or making meals, you need to be an organized person. Food drives and all in food, you don't need to be very organized. You need to sort of show up. Although I guess in all of these, there is the opportunity to show up both in crop walk and making food if you can convince someone else to do the cooking, right? Making meals, and then crop walk, and then there's a communications requirement around making meals more and more, as we're involved in more and more people to say, oh, I'll take lead on contacting, that ministry or whatever and getting it sorted out. So the last slide is a rough calendar. And this is cool. So I didn't want to put weekly food donations because I couldn't fit it in, so I just put given the because I figured you know what that meant at this point. But and I missed in January we actually did CCM at the MAC. We're not in February. We have dates scheduled through October with them, and we probably will for November and December. But if you look at this calendar-ish thing, there's sort of always something going on. There's always opportunities to feed our neighbors, and I think that's really my hope with this is to sort of think about where there's opportunities for you to expand your involvement or be involved for the first time or what have you. So, questions?
Would you say something about what it takes to take food to the night shelter? That is, if there are 35 people there,
Yeah.
I have to bring 35 chickens.
I wouldn't use Al's method, that's for sure. But if you're bringing, yes. The question is what it takes to feed, what it takes to feed at the night shelter. And so what we find, men's group is a good example of this. If we're doing a night doing an evening dinner, we'll say, all right, well, we need 40. And so 3 or 4 guys will step up and say, I'll do, a dozen chicken thighs or whatever the case may be. And so spreading that both cooking responsibility and expense across multiple people is a great way to deal with it. There's been times where people have said I'm interested, and but I don't know what group I'd go with. My group's not interested in doing it, and these sort of ad hoc groups pop up. So if you're not involved in a group that says I want to do this, but you want to be involved, like speak up, and it can definitely happen and take place. So yeah, so the prep can be much. You don't have to prep for 35 people. It's figuring out how you can share the load across 3, 4, 5. Yep. Yeah.
Where does the ministry of Take Them a Meal we do for people in the parish who have illnesses or recovery that they need? And is that part of? I don't know, but I thought, well, yeah, these are not people on the street necessarily, but they are people in need.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So that is a ministry here, that people that are after surgery or dealing with some family situation that All Saints does take food, and absolutely right. Like when I didn't include it, and I knew I was going to miss something, and that's the one I missed. So that's another opportunity. Are you a good person to talk to if someone's about that?
Liz, I'm happy to talk, but Liz Rogers.
Liz Rogers, organizer of that. Cool. I'm sorry. I'll get to you in a second.
The Daughters of the King also take food to the spouse abuse shelter every time there's a fifth Thursday, and anybody is welcome to help with that.
Different.
MAC, Mothers and Children, do we have a specific Tuesday, or is it random?
It's looking like it's going to be random. We did, but the scheduling has sort of gotten funky over there, so I'm trying to get it pinned down. My hope is once I have dates, I'm going to get a page on the website that has some of the stuff for the year, including night shelter and MAC and what have you.
Do you know our July shelter dates already?
Yes. Let me look at my phone. Our July shelter dates are in August. August 3rd through August 9th. August 3rd through August 9th. We always do it in July, except when we do it in August, I guess. Late July.
Gary, we used to have